cable media outlets have their heads so far up their asses that they're ignoring like a real humanitarian crisis and an economic meltdown in South Africa. We're talking about the country with the largest oil reserves in the world, Venezuela, and another country that's one of the so-called BRICS nations, the 5 countries that are supposedly the fastest growing developing world economies: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and I think the S is for South Korea, but don't hold me to it. Anyway, these reporters have pretty much ignored Venezuela. They don't want to talk about it. They're probably scared to go in depth into a crisis entirely made by the state. And if you follow baseball, Miguel Cabrera is probably the best batting average hitter since Tony Gwynn. Probably even better than Tony Gwynn, although I haven't been keeping up lately. And he says, I'm tired of paying protection money. He's talking about his homeland, Venezuela. It says Venezuela is a rich source of MLB talent. And as such, Venezuelan major leaguers are often publicly confronted by the political upheavals in their home country. Venezuela has long had crime problems. The 2011 kidnapping of then Nationals catcher Wilson Ramos is a prominent example. And more recently, the nation's economy has threatened to collapse. Most observers would agree that the self-immolating policies of late President Hugo Chavez have been made worse by current President Nicolas Maduro, who faces a critical and not entirely transparent referendum on July 30th. Into this fray steps Venezuelan native son and future Hall of Famer Miguel Cabrera of the Tigers. Cabrera recently took to Instagram to release a series of commentaries on the Venezuelan crisis in general and the Maduro regime in particular. Here's a look at a compilation in Spanish. So this is not reported by the media at all. Except, I mean, this is CBS Sports, but, you know, get real. People are really not paying attention to this. I actually did not know about this until now. So I'll try to free translate. So he says, I want to tell you something. It's been a while since I've talked about anything political. But right now we need to get into it.
No, yo sí que son arrechos, que está hablando, son arrechos, dale pues. Marico, espera, las protestas van a seguir. Y van a seguir, ojalá que sigan hasta que lleguen a Maracay. Pero tenemos que controlar cada estado. Estoy luchando, mi gente. Aquí todo el mundo, si tú estás sabroso allá. Bueno, me dio pinga de llegar para Venezuela, ¿viste? No, como me dio una chavita. Si vas para Venezuela, te quiebran, me matan.
I couldn't get much of that, but he said the last thing he said was, if you're a Chavista, I'll kill you and I'll break you, which is, you know, that's strong language from a guy who's a Major League Baseball player.
Así me vieron. Bueno, esos chavistas que tal, que son chavistas, pero no son chavistas nada, son oportunistas porque se agarran ahí del billete, o no son chavistas nada, no son de la gente nada.
He says the Chavistas are not for the people at all. He's not a Chavista, you know, so we're talking about the most famous Venezuelan of right now, one of the better baseball players of our last 20, 25 years. And he's denouncing the Venezuelan regime, and instead we see all the time just fucking Lena Dunham eating cake on her toilet like some sort of pig. And that's what passes for real political discourse. But Miguel Cabrera, one of the greatest hitters in MLB history, talking about politics. No, that's not important. Via MLive, which is like the Michigan portal for news. It says, here's a couple of key translated quotes from Cabrera. Please do not do anything to my family. That's what I ask. He said he was sick of paying protection money against the threat that they are going to kidnap my mother and not knowing if they are the police or criminals. He also seems to be stung by criticism that he was not doing enough to help people suffering through the economic crisis. I have helped Venezuela a lot. He said, I have sent medicine and food. What do you want me to send? Weapons? Don't tell me that we are not doing anything. Cabrera also went on to say, I protest for truth, for the end of communism, and I am not with dictators. To the people of the resistance, you are not alone. Cabrera, 34, is in his 15th major league season. He was originally signed by the Marlins as a 16-year-old out of Venezuela in 1999. So people are ignoring this story. And, you know, I mean, I have to say that this is really negligence on the part of the media, that we're talking about fucking Donald Trump Jr. We're talking about the bitch Kardashian sister with, or whatever her name is, Black China, the porn star, with Kardashian's, the Kardashian dude, Rob Kardashian, whatever his name is. That's what people talk about. They don't give a fuck about real people. That's what the liberal media and its entertainment arm are talking about. And let's switch over to Brazil here, where there's some good news. It says, in Brazil, President Lula conviction opens field for 2018 presidential race. The graft conviction Wednesday of former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, a front-runner for next year's presidential election, opens the door for an outsider to take power in Latin America's largest party, political experts said. Lula, a giant on the Brazilian political scene who led Brazil from 2003 to 2011, has said he wants to run for president again next year. But if his nearly 10-year sentence is upheld on appeal, Lula, founder of the leftist Workers' Party, would be barred from seeking office again for 8 years, beginning after any jail time is complete. Lula, at 71, is among a raft of Brazilian elites, topped by an epic corruption scandal. It has battered the nation's economy, engulfed every major party, and deepened public cynicism about politics. It's a toxic mix that has enraged voters who are searching for someone to lead them out of the political and economic wilderness. Brazil is now as polarized as the U.S. It really has been for years, said Carlos Melo, a political scientist with INSPER, a Sao Paulo business school. But if Lula is absent, would unquestionably open the space for an outside, very emotional leader, a bit like the U.S. President Trump. Lula was convicted on Wednesday by Judge Sergio Moro, who found Lula guilty of accepting 3.7 reais, or $1.15 million worth of bribes from engineering firm OASA SA. That is the amount prosecutors said the company spent refurbishing a beach apartment for Lula in return for his help winning contracts with state oil company Petroleiro Brasileiro. I think it's known as Petrobras. OAS was part of a supplier cartel that prosecutors said fleeced billions of dollars from Petrobras through inflated contracts, funneling some of the ill-gotten gains to politicians and political parties. Several OAS executives were jailed by Moro, the hard-charging judge overseeing the so-called car wash investigation, the largest ever corruption probe in Brazil's history. Lula's lawyers said he is innocent. He will remain free while his attorneys appeal the ruling, which they characterized as a political witch hunt. The appeals court is expected to take at least 8 months to rule. This politically motivated judgment attacks Brazil's rule of law, democracy, and Lula's basic human rights. It is of immense concern to the Brazilian people and to international community. The last paragraph was a statement by his defense. Despite his legal woes, the charismatic Lula remains Brazil's best-known politician and has retained a base of loyal supporters. As president, He channeled resources from a commodities boom into social programs that help lift millions from poverty. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound like something somebody would want to happen? Because it sounds a little familiar to me. Recent surveys from the respected Datafoya Polling Institute shows that in a second round runoff next year, Lula would beat all contenders with the exception of the environmentalist and two-time presidential candidate Marina Silva, with whom he is in a technical tie. But if Lula cannot run, and with roughly 20% of the electorate undecided on any candidate, the election is up for grabs. While Silva has polled well, Mello and other political watchers doubt that the soft-spoken environmental expert could win, in part because her campaigns have lacked the fiery speeches and dramatic flair needed to engage many voters. Well, anyway, forget this Brazil politics for a second. This was the guy who was the first Latin American leader post-Cold War to institute socialism in Latin America, and it was a tremendous bust. And they're now suffering for it. Brazil's economy contracted in a royal way, I think, in 2016. And Lula's successor, President Rousseff, was just removed from office. And now they have to dig themselves out of it, all because of socialism. So have a great night. You can read these articles at the links below. I will probably release this tomorrow on Thursday. But have a great day and stay bold.